You watch a perfectly smooth block of jelly get crushed under hundreds of pounds of pressure. It feels deeply, effortlessly satisfying. And then you look up. You've been sitting in the exact same spot on the couch for 3 hours, avoiding the one thing you actually need to do today. You desperately want to change your life. You have the goals and the ambition, and yet your body is physically anchored to the cushions. The friction between who you want to be and what you're doing right now is exhausting. Society has a convenient label for this: laziness. Yet that definition fails to account for your experience. True laziness requires a lack of desire, the state of being genuinely content doing nothing. You are not content. You are quietly panicking about the work you aren't doing. Since the desire to act is present, the failure to launch must stem from a different mechanism entirely. The inability to get off the couch is not a defect in your character. It is a result of how the human brain processes the relationship between action and emotion. Internalizing the label of lazy is the exact psychological trap keeping you stuck. Accepting that characterization prevents you from identifying and treating the biological malfunction happening inside your head. Breaking the paralysis requires reclassifying procrastination as a mechanism of emotional regulation. We are looking at a system designed to manage discomfort, not a failure of time management. When you look at a chaotic spreadsheet or a blank document, your brain isn't afraid of the work. It is reacting to the negative emotions attached to that work: the boredom, the acute frustration, or the creeping self-doubt. To protect you from those uncomfortable feelings, your brain enters an evolutionary energy-saving mode. It diverts the signal away from the high-friction task and routes it straight into a low-friction, high-reward activity, like scrolling. This creates the motivation myth. We operate under the assumption that a spontaneous internal feeling of motivation must exist before we can physically start working. This diagram shows the sequence of human drive. Motivation is a byproduct generated by the momentum of action. Your brain won't naturally generate drive while sitting still. You must physically trigger the sequence. Once moving, momentum generates motivation, which feeds right back into the loop. Waiting until you feel ready is a biological dead end. You are waiting for an event that requires your prior physical movement to exist. This brings us to discipline. If we strip away the punitive connotations of that word, we find a neutral systemic mechanism. It is a tool used to execute a cognitive bypass, the deliberate act of short-circuiting your brain's emotional filtering system. Step 1 of the bypass requires objective acknowledgement. You simply observe the internal resistance and state, "I do not want to do this." Step 2 is the conscious decoupling of that feeling from the literal physical movement of your body. You are severing the connection between the emotional processing center and your motor execution. With that connection cut, you can open your laptop or put on your running shoes, completely independent of your internal emotional weather. This is the difference between two distinct operating systems. A reactor dictates their actions based on fluctuating feelings. An architect dictates their actions based on predetermined systems. The architect does not suppress their anxiety or fatigue. They experience those emotions, but they revoke the emotion's authority to dictate their physical movement. Discipline is the physical act of moving your hands while you still feel terrible. You are executing a protocol regardless of the internal protest. Operating this way shifts your internal hierarchy. Your feelings remain, but they function as background noise rather than acting as stop signs. To force this cognitive bypass into effect right now, use a micro-strategy. Commit to exactly 2 minutes of physical movement toward your task. You aren't trying to finish the project. You are lowering the perceived friction enough to trick your brain out of its energy-saving mode. Once you cross that